So we would like to begin today's session with a land acknowledgement that will be delivered by Lamia.
Thanks, Laura, and thank you all for joining us today. We'll begin with the land acknowledgement. So we recognize the history, strength, and diversity of Canada's First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. We are committed to engaging respectfully with Indigenous children, young people, and families within and across nations in what is known as Ontario. I'm currently situated in Ottawa, the traditional unceded territory of Algonquin Anishinaabe people, and we recognize their enduring presence on this land, their past and present contributions, and we express our deepest respect and gratitude to them. And I invite each of you to take a moment and acknowledge the territory and people of the land on which you currently stand.
Thank you, Lamia. My name is Laura Daly-Trottier, and I'm a QI and data coach for the Excellence Through Quality Improvement project. And I've had the distinct pleasure of facilitating these data literacy conversations over the last 3 years. And to date, we have delivered 8 webinars and 3 workshops, all aimed at supporting the sector in understanding and using their data for planning and delivery of mental health and addiction services. Our mission is to make data the realm of everyone, and to turn data into the beginning of the conversation. After today's session, we are hoping that you will leave with some inspiration that you can bring back to your own work. You may even leave here with a heightened sense of curiosity about how data dashboards and visual management tools can be used to support effective dialogue and decision-making. Or perhaps you will leave with a better understanding of the importance of data validation and the selection of meaningful indicators. You may leave here with a few tidbits of knowledge about how trusting and critically evaluating your data can lead to better performance, evaluation, and continuous improvement. So this slide came from the first in the series in the session where Dr. Derek Chichak kicked us off with Data Literacy 101. We have continued to use this slide in the subsequent presentations to ground us in answering the question, why data literacy? The underlying theme of these webinars is that data literacy is increasingly pivotal in a rapidly evolving digital landscape in an era dominated by information, where it's easy to find and often be overwhelmed by the amount of data and data sources. Understanding how to navigate, interpret, and harness this information is not just a skill, but it's a necessity. So think of data literacy as a critical skill, a practical resource, and a communication tool. As such, the basic concepts that are needed to interpret this language becomes increasingly important. Data informs local and regional planning, system efficiency, and measurement-based care. Examples of the use of data include the OHT dashboards, OSP reporting tools, OCAN reports. As a sector, we are fast implementing the PDS, and more agencies are mining their own data to better understand who they serve and how. The increasing focus on progress and outcome monitoring or measurement-based care require accurate data to demonstrate performance at the client and organizational level. In many ways, we have the opportunity to think better than what was built for other sectors. We can focus our measurement on what matters to clients. We are building a culture, and in a culture that embraces quality improvement and accountability, data are used to monitor performance, track changes before and after an intervention is implemented, and are transparently shared with boards of directors, funders, and the public. Data literacy skills allow us to create outputs from these data like tables, charts, and graphs, but also understand outputs created by others. It helps us understand where the data originated, how it was collected, and how it was analyzed and visualized. Data is power, and so is your ability to understand it. So I would now like to introduce you to our speakers for today's webinar. From the Children's Center Thunder Bay, we are joined by Scott McBean, Jamie Balageron-Willette, and Fred Schmidt. Scott Bean is the Associate Director of Continuous Quality Improvement and Service Planning. Jamie is joining us as well as the data analyst for Children's Center. And Fred is a psychologist and a continuous quality improvement consultant for Children's Center Thunder Bay. We have Dr. Marianne Roback from CMHA Ottawa. She is the Director of Integration, Research and Evaluation and an adjunct professor at the University of Ottawa. She conducted her postdoctoral fellowship at the Center for Research and Educational and Community Services at the University of Ottawa, where she worked with CMHA to develop and implement decision support dashboards. She uses mixed methods to build the evidence base of community mental health interventions, such as housing first and intensive case management. And she works to expand the research and evaluation capacity of community-based organizations. Marianne has a master's of social work and a PhD in community psychology and teaches program evaluation and community psychology courses at the graduate and undergraduate levels. Lamia Moheb is our first speaker today. Lamia is a quality improvement specialist at the Knowledge Institute on Child and Youth Mental Health and Addictions. With a background in pharmacy, she holds certifications in Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, Project Management Professional, Change Management Professional, and Key Performance Indicators Professional. Lamia has led numerous impactful projects, including the recent Quest Cohort Program. So I will now pass things over to Lamia.
Thanks, Laura. Happy to join today. And in my few slides today, we'll be navigating the data landscape from measures to actionable wisdom. So the agenda for my talk today will be as you see here, about the Knowledge Institute, a bit of information, then we'll go up the data pyramid from bottom up, and we'll have an idea about the measures and KPIs, indicator selection, benchmarks and targets, data quality, and I'll leave with some useful resources and links for you to consider for further information. So a bit of information about the Knowledge Institute. The three pillars, strategic pillars of the Knowledge Institute are to strengthen knowledge and skills, mobilize evidence, and accelerate system change. And that's why we are contributing to this really very informative and very useful series of webinars on data literacy. All of this, we believe it will contribute to better mental health and well-being for all infants, children, young people, and families. Our Quest program, again, is a quality improvement program offered by the Knowledge Institute, and it is based on the Lean Six Sigma methodology. It is offered for Ontario child and youth mental health and addiction sector. I'm sure that all of us know that the ultimate purpose of collecting data is to provide basis for action. And I will echo what Laura mentioned, data is power. So how we do this? Enhancing data literacy is the first step, actually, to go this route. And we know that data literacy focuses on the competencies involved in working with data, including the knowledge and the skills to read, analyze, interpret, visualize, and communicate data, as well as understanding the use of data in decision-making. So how to do this? Not sure if you have come through this before or not, the data pyramid, or what we know as the data, information, knowledge, wisdom, DIKW model. Actually, this data pyramid was described by management and organizational theorist Russell E-QIP in the 1980s. And as you see here, the bottom of the pyramid, or the base of the pyramid, is about data, raw data gathering. All of us have tons of data to be gathered every day, even in our organizations. And when we clean, validate, and visualize those data, it provides us with some sort of information. And when we add some context to this information, it provides even more knowledge. And this knowledge is the base for the wisdom, is the base for our decision making, is the base for action to be taken. So moving from the bottom up, actually we are moving from contextualization to conceptualization. How to do this? As our experience and our literacy across, this data pyramid increase, we are moving from just gathering raw data to putting this data in action and reach the top of the pyramid and the wisdom that we call. So maybe you can take a moment and think about yourself and your organization. Where are you here? Data, information, knowledge, or wisdom? And another thing that we collect data for is the measures, metrics, indicators, and key performance indicators. And usually we use those terminologies interchangeably. However, there are some differences in between. As you see here, measures are just numbers expressed in units. So when I measure, for example, my body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, that's a measure. Is it good or bad? Is it high or low? What this measure provides me with? When I add a context to it, when I put it on a meter or on a scale, it becomes a metric. So the metric is a measure put into context. When I know that the reference range for body temperature is 36.8 to 37.2 degrees Celsius, I know that measuring my body temperature at 37 is considered, a normal one. When I say it's a normal one, that becomes an indicator. It indicates that I'm okay. I don't have fever. I don't have anything. If it is 39, for example, it indicates that I have a fever. So indicator is a metric that provides insight, that provides a piece of information. And then with the key performance indicators, those are the indicators that relate to the strategic objectives of the agency. Back again to my pharmacy background and my healthcare, and the body temperature example here, all of us visit physician offices, visit ER at some times, and in the triage, they measure the blood pressure, the body temperature, the oxygenation, those are key performance indicators for our body. Those are the indicators that tell how our body performs. The same for the organization. So you have some financial indicators, some human resource indicators, some process and program indicators. Again, when those indicators are aligned with the strategic objectives and strategic goals of the organization, they become key performance indicators. So all key performance indicators are metrics, but not all metrics are key performance indicators. So please, if you have any question, write it in the chat or let me know about this. If we go back to the data pyramid and try to align these measures, indicators, metrics, and KPIs with the data pyramid, you will see that measures goes with the data. So we collect tons of measures. Then when we add some context to it, when we put those measures on a meter or a scale, it becomes metrics. So it provides a bit of information. Then when we add more context to this metric, it becomes an indicators and tells us about something. And when we put those indicators based on this knowledge into action, reaching the top of the pyramid, the wisdom, that becomes a KPI, and it contributes to the organizational performance as a whole. Again, try to link everything together. We collect data for our indicators and for our measures. So what makes a good indicator? Think of being smarter when choosing the indicators to measure the performance of the organization. Being specific, the indicator should measure what it should measure. So indicator definition is very important. being measurable, quantifiable. This is very important. How are we quantifying this indicator? How are we measuring it? Again, the indicator definition will be very important for this, because if I want to measure the wait time, for example, I want to measure the wait time from this point to this point. This will keep the data consistency and integrity, and everyone will measure it the same way. Achievable here, relates to the target or the benchmark you have for this indicator. So when we have a certain target, we need to make it, achievable, ambitious, but yet achievable, in order to keep, the excitement and the excitement of the staff, and to avoid any, moral implications. The indicator should be relevant. What I need to measure, what I need to assess, what I need to monitor. So it should be relevant to what I need to measure, should be time bound. And some of us actually don't think of what we call indicator life cycle. So indicators are not there for forever. So when I reach certain benchmark or certain goal, I need to revise and reassess. Should I keep it? Should I challenge myself more? Should I retire this indicator? So again, there should be time bound for the goal of the indicator and for the indicator itself. And at every, time, or from time to time, at every quarter, every year, every goal achievement, whatever you set it for, we need to reevaluate and again decide on the target, on the benchmark, on the indicator life cycle. Decide on everything, on the relevancy, on the measurability, on everything that relate to the indicator, and review. Based on this evaluation, we'll review or revise or readjust or even retire this indicator. So those are the criteria that you need to keep in mind when choosing an indicator to measure something. Okay. Types of indicators, I'm sure many of us came through this. We have 5 main types of indicators. We'll start with the structure or the input, and this, or I will not say indicators right now, I'll say measures, because we didn't add any context to it. So we have structure or input, and that is required to deliver the service. Measures what is required to deliver the service. For example, the number of clinicians trained in certain area, in brief services or in a single session, for example. The budget, the direct service hours that we provide. So some structures in place to provide the output that our organization is going to provide. Then the process indicators. So the process means a series of steps in, to provide a certain input. So anything that measures anything within the process, that's a process indicator. Like in the intake process, for example, that's a process that we need to measure the steps within this process. So like the wait time between requesting a service and the service delivery, for example. The output indicators measures the quantity of the services that we deliver. So the number of clients being served, the number of single sessions delivered, number of counseling sessions delivered. It's an output. So what actually we provided, what we delivered. The outcome is the measure of the impact of the output, like the client satisfaction rate, for example, the number of clients returning to the ER for the same reason within 30 days, that's an outcome. So it's the impact of the output that we provide. And balancing in measures that we usually don't pay attention to. It measures whether the changes intended to improve one aspect are positively or negatively affecting other aspects. That's the balance, how to keep the balance there. So for example, the wait time and client satisfaction rate, the session length and the clinical outcome. So look at the balance between the interrelated areas of the process. And so when I'm thinking of choosing an indicator, should I go with the structure, with the process, with the output, or with the outcome? Which I should be choosing, which I should be selecting here? Actually, we need to always choose a diverse set of indicators. Don't focus on one area. Don't focus only on process or on structure or on output or outcome. Choose a diverse set of indicators and link them to the dimensions of quality and the strategic objectives of the agency. Find the link. So I'm here increasing my efficiency. I'm here increasing my effectiveness. I'm being timely. Find the link between the indicator and the quality dimension or the strategic objective of the agency. And we know that we cannot improve everything at the same time. So set your priorities as well and set your timelines and think smarter, as we said. When we select this diverse set of indicators and collect data for them, we need to interpret this data to move up the pyramid, to move up the data pyramid and go to the wisdom or putting those data in action. Here is an example I have from the child and youth mental health performance indicators on the BI solution. I will not go through this, but I'll just give you a quick look. For the domains, they have client profile, efficiency, responsiveness, safety, access, and effectiveness. And you see here, proportion of children, youth population served, profile of children, youth served. If you go through this, you will find that most of it are output indicators. We are not considering other aspects, which maybe we need to rethink about. Indicators data are not to be interpreted in silos or separately. It will be very beneficial and very informative if you look at them in clusters. So here are a couple examples. If you look at the proportion of children, youth, or population served, which is related to the domain of client profile, and the average children on the service wait list, the average children time on the service wait list, which is related to the access domain, and service utilization, which is related to the efficiency. If you look at those three together, it may give you an idea about the number of staff or clinical staff needed for this specific service. So it will help plan. It will help inform the future plan and inform the decision making. Another example, as you see here, is looking at the proportion of children and youth with positive outcomes. This is related to the effectiveness and the client direct service hours received, which is related to the efficiency. This might give you a clue about the average number of direct service hours needed, and this can be classified by core service, and this can inform you how to make even the indirect service hours more efficient. So it's really very important to look at indicators in groups, in clusters, not separately. And why I'm saying this here, because it will help while you are developing and building your dashboard, it may help to make some clusters and some groups like this. It will be easy for you to look at different aspects and to inform decisions and go up the data pyramid from data to wisdom. Here are a couple examples, more examples, but I'm not going through this. I know that you will be having access to the presentation, and I left also some useful resources for you to have a look at. But when we choose our set of indicators and collect the data for our indicators, again, thinking of the knowledge on the data pyramid, we need to set some benchmark. We need to add some context to our information. So how to do this? Setting benchmarks and targets and being smarter, again, here, don't be ambitious, very ambitious, because we need to be to consider, being achievable here. So benchmarks are usually external references that show how others in the industry, market, or sector are performing on similar indicators, while targets are internal goals that are set based on specific objectives. For example, the wait time for a specific type of service is 30 days. So I set my target, the internal one, to be 20 days, which is good. I can set from 30 to 7 days, for example. That would be too ambitious. And there is a way how to calculate this and how to set the target and how to move through this and how to challenge yourself even more. So things to consider when setting the target. I'm trying to advance the slide. Oh, yeah. So why those, again, targets, setting targets and benchmarks are important, because they add the context. They move from the information to the knowledge here. So based on those, you can evaluate your performance. I know if I'm doing good or bad, if I need to improve, if I need to take an action, identify some gaps. And from the agencies I'm working on in our cohort projects, there is a common say there. We send our information, we send our data indicators and analysis to the ministry, and we never hear back. We don't know if we are performing well or not, what to do with this. So the whole idea of providing benchmarks and targets is to provide context to the data you are collecting and to know where you are on this scale. When setting benchmarks and targets, again, I will emphasize that we need to be ambitious, but not consider the feasibility with respect to our resources, what we have, our priorities. So all of this to be considered. But how to set an indicator target? You need to define the indicator to track first, again and again and again. Indicator definition is very important. Assess the current performance and assess how are we performing right now. Consider external benchmarks. Is there any benchmarks out there in the sector I'm working on, and is there something needed by the standards I'm following, by the accreditation body, by the ministry? Define short and long term. Don't shoot very high at the very beginning. Okay, this is the short-term goal for our indicator. And then the long-term, if we achieve this short-term goal, the long-term one will be like this. Implement and review and reassess. Again, think smarter. This is not something that is linear. It is always iterative, and you can go and revisit and readjust. So it's not something linear. As you see here, it is an iterative process. When we choose, our targets, our benchmarks, our data, and collect our data for the indicators, we need to ensure the data quality across all of this. This is very important, because if we didn't collect it right, if we don't have quality data, we will not be having the right information as a base for our decision making. So we need to keep the data quality across those 4 stages. The application of the data, why we are collecting this data. So this is the application. How are we going to use this data? The analysis of the data, the collection, the extraction of the data from whatever software or tool you use, the warehousing, even the archiving of the data, because at any time I can retrieve it. We need to keep high quality data at all of those 4 phases. So what is a quality data? Quality data, this data that is accessible, accurate, complete, consistent, current, precise, relevant, reliable, timely, valid. And we can talk about this even for a series of webinars just about data quality, but it is very crucial and very important to inform the decision, because if the data is not right, the decision or the knowledge or the information you'll be getting will not be right. So those are just, a very high level things to consider when you think about choosing your indicators, collecting the data for the indicators you choose, interpreting the data you collected. And always remember that we can have data without information, but we cannot have information without data. So, any question? Okay, back to you, Laura.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Lami. I really appreciate that presentation. I've heard you speak a number of times, and I never tire, and I learn something new every single time. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Jamie, Fred, and Scott.
Thank you, Laura. Here we go. I'm just making sure the slides are working. Thank you for inviting us to present today. We're pleased to come and do a presentation. This is the presentation team. Just let me go back here. This is the presentation team. There we go. And we're also the CQI team. I apologize. There's a bit of a delayed response in me hitting the moving forward button, and then, okay, here we go. Good. And we're giving an overview, and I think our presentation is really going to complement, thank you, Lamia, for the information you have, because I think we are saying a lot of the same things. We reorganized it or presented it in a slightly different way. Some of the things like your pyramid is our data life cycle, and you've talked about data accuracy, and we're going to speak to some of that too. So looking forward to following up and talking a bit about our experience. Again, this is an overview. It's hard to get all the details and explain everything, the details and experience of what we've had in the past years. A little bit about Children's Center. We're in Thunder Bay, and we are a pretty broad organization. We provide services in mental health and child development, service coordination, and we have, we're not a large organization, but we're not small either, about 160 staff, and we do the district of Thunder Bay, so it's like the city proper as well as the more rural regions. Then we're a pretty large region. Okay, I'm just waiting for it. There we go. It's a bit of a delay. Sorry about that. I'm getting used to the forward button. Our agency's had a history of quality assurance and quality control and quality improvement. And language has changed over the years. And so we refer to ourselves as continuous quality improvement now, adhering to some of the lean processes. And we've done a lot of training at our agency. Everyone gets exposed to white and yellow belt, and then Scott and myself, we have a black belt, so we are really immersed in doing lean practices. And over the past 5 years where we've been on this journey, we've grown in terms of the kinds of lean or CQI activities we do. We started off with traditional lean kind of process improvement projects, and then we grew into using data management and dashboards and things that many people and that we're talking about today about how we use our data. We've also launched something called Make It Better boards, which are real small, quick improvement practices that could be a whole presentation on its own. And we've also recently incorporated into our data and our CQI practices employee wellness. So it's not just about clients and our service process, but it's also about our organization and how we're doing as an organization and the staff wellness. So it's really looking about the culture of the organization, which I think is really critical. Data, as Lamia was saying, requires a number of things to be knowledge and wisdom to go up her pyramid. And I think culture is real important with that. And so it's about relationship and how we're using the data. And the little visual that we have here, I think many organizations have different visuals of how they organize their CQI culture. And we've got here this interrelationship between our clients, our families, our employees, and then within our management system and how data is going up and down in terms of the management structure. But we're communicating, reporting, and there's a cycle to it. And there's a constant PDSA process as we do that. And so that's how we think about it, but that's evolved over time. We didn't start there. And again, it's always changing. So we're going to, in a year or two from now, it's going to be something different, I'm sure. As I mentioned, there's the three of us that do the CQI work at the agency. Two of us, Scott and I, are part-time, and Jamie works full-time doing the data analysis. And these are the kinds of ways that we use the data, the primary responsibilities of program or team service reports, our active dashboards that we'll show you some visuals on. We collect client experience information. We do specific data pulls on specific kind of questions. So we have a process in place for that, the ministry reporting, and we do file audits as well. And so all that data that we do, we try to integrate it and use it. And we put it into these 7 key quality indicators that we've got here. And the first 6, I think, are probably familiar to people and I think this is pretty common across the board, that we often collect data across these different areas, but we've also added the employee wellness, which is a newer thing for us in the past year. And you can see here, we have questions related to the quality indicators about how we structure it and organize it and think about it. There we go. This is a whole presentation on its own. We have here, you see the 80% that strike out how it started and all the difficulties. There's a whole thing about lessons learned, and maybe the title for this is How Not to Do It, because we started off not really knowing what we were doing. And the way we did it was really counter to how we think about it now. And it'd be interesting to talk about other organizations' experience and even sort of how we've evolved and changed. But what we initially jumped into, we were keen, enthusiastic about data, and we used it in a way that was really a performance management type model, which was not a good fit and created all kinds of distress and difficulties and was not good for the culture. And so we learned our lesson and think about it quite differently now. And we've gone another route. And so this is where we really reinstalled it and we thought about it differently. And there's some really good models here. Like I've got the stewardship model, and there's a really good book. It's 10 years old now, called Reinventing Organizations. And it's really about having more collaborative, shared responsibility about data. And this goes to the PDSA and our initial graphic about where the data goes up and down in terms of communication and reporting. And it's in shared ownership, really true to the lean principle that everyone should be involved and responsible, in terms of our culture and our quality. And so how do we use that data? And data literacy is a really important thing because not everyone is familiar with it or, have a natural affinity to it. And so it takes some thoughts about how to make it in a way that's really digestible and usable for people. And so that's where we worked on this and developed a particular model about data. And we call this the data lifecycle. And when I was looking at Lamia's pyramid, I was thinking, well, there's some similarity there in terms of the data where we have these 4 quadrants and they're repetitious circle. They're just repeating, going around in terms of the data. So we have the data entry and the data accuracy, which we'll speak to a little bit. And then how do we pull the data? How do we visualize it? And then how does it affect the culture of the organization? So that's a repetitive process of going around in terms of how data is used. And so we find that helpful. And it's a way to think, we communicate that to staff in that way and think about it that way. And we have spent a lot of time thinking about like the accuracy piece. And I think Jamie's going to kind of transition and talk a little bit about that. And I just want to say before Jamie kicks in there is that we really feel like we're in process, really true to the CQI and lean kind of philosophy that it's always ongoing and you're never there. And it's hard work. And I think culture takes a lot of work. It's hard to do, but it's really critical if you want to be effective in your use of data and CQI. You really have to pay a lot of attention to culture. So I'll pause there and I'll let you take over, Jamie.
Thank you, Fred. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our service time dashboards. They've become an important piece of our data culture here at Children's Center. We want to ensure that we're working with as accurate data as possible. And to do that, we need to engage staff in the process. We need to build the rationale on why accurate data matters. And the global understanding here is that better data helps us better help our clients. And to do that, we've established a training and monitoring program to improve our data accuracy. It wasn't always perfect. As you can see here, it took a lot of time and practice to get to where we are. In April of 2021, agency service entry accuracy was at 50%, and a lot of dedication and time went into getting us to the 91% we were in November of 2023.
I'll just interrupt really quickly, Jimmy. What we very quickly realized that we can give people manuals and or videos and they can read it, but there's still going to be a ridiculous amount of data errors. It wasn't until we sat down with the actual staff and worked to actually teach them and understand what their experience is with the data and the data input that we actually started to see that forward or that upward progression of the accuracy. So, and we spent a lot of time dedicated to sitting down with staff to have those conversations individually without blame and really just a teaching. We use it as a bit of a teaching moment to be able to support that data accuracy.
And then another goal with our service dashboards is to automate the data flow. So staff input information and service time into our client management software, EMHware, and into the HR system. And then we do bi-weekly data pulls and amalgamate the data. The whole process takes about 3 hours from start to finish and produces 72 individual staff dashboards. And we want to present information that staff will understand. As we've said a few times, it's not perfect, but we're always taking steps to make improvements. And that includes responding to the needs of our staff and managers. It's a continual process of adjusting and modifying in order to meet those needs. This is an example of our staff dashboard. This is the one that gets sent to our clinical staff. It's a little bit hard to read on the slide, I think, but the important thing to note is that it's separated into review items and action items. The review items are retrospective data, broken down into like average service time, direct client hours, indirect client hours, and non-service or non-client hours, the number of clients on a caseload, as well as a breakdown of their service time by activity. In the action items, we have things that still need to be completed. So here we have the non-authenticated case notes and the non-authenticated case data, and they'll be able to see which clients' files they need to go into to complete that. This is our manager dashboard. This is the one that managers use. So it's spread out a little differently. We have it in 3 categories. We have staff service hours, we have clients receiving services, and we have clients waiting for services. This one helps us see where we are and if we're meeting our targets and benchmarks in certain areas. And then again, our dashboards are discussion with the clinical staff. Each manager sends an individual dashboard to the members of their teams, and those conversations are built into each supervision. We want the staff's time to be a collaborative discussion, and that includes a continuous conversation with the managers and each staff about how this could be improved. And now I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thanks, Jamie. So on one of Fred's disclaimer, there was a statement there that said, you know, there is a hypothetical and then there's the realistic. And now we're going to talk about the realistic and some of those reflections on some of the challenges that we've had with our service dashboards. One of the hardest piece is that translation from managers to staff. Data literacy is huge. And we've realized that it's both data literacy, both with our staff, but also with our managers. And we really need to invest the time for the managers to be able to understand what those dashboards are telling them, to be curious about them, so that they can then translate that with the staff and they can have those open communication. The other thing is, and I don't know if those of you have done dashboards before, but numbers are intimidating, and often staff apply value to those numbers. And I don't know about your staff, but our staff are high achieving individuals and they want to be high achieving individuals. So sometimes when they see those numbers and they're not necessarily as high as they want to be, it can evoke strong emotions. So that's something that we're working through and we're having those conversations on a regular basis. The other piece is, and so like Jamie showed you a dashboard. That was, I think, iteration, I don't know, 12 of our dashboard process. You know, we've gone back and forth and trying to kind of figure out how do we make these dashboards appropriate. But the question always remains, are we giving the correct information, the most effective, efficient information on these dashboards? And to be honest with you, that is a work in progress, and it's something that we are continuously evolving with those dashboards. The other piece is to, you know, Fred talked about, he had that 80% crossed out, and that's what we originally started. We said, you know what, 80% service time, that's what we absolutely need. And we think that just given all of the other activities our staff complete, 80% might not actually be appropriate. In fact, we're really not even allowed to say 80% at our agency right now, because there's such meaning associated with that. But we're really trying to kind of work through and figure out what that target is. And to be honest with you, we don't have an answer for that, for what is the appropriate kind of ratio for direct versus indirect time. So if anybody has any suggestions around that, we would gladly love to hear what that looks like. But again, it's something that we're trying to figure out. So it's, you know, Lamia kind of talked about it. We identified a target, but is that target really realistic? And that's something that we're currently working through. So now I'm going to just kind of discuss another way that we're using our data, and that's really our team service report. So Fred showed the 7 key quality indicators, and what we've really tried to do is do our program evaluations based on those 7 key quality indicators. And the idea behind this, you know, using, you know, when Fred talked about the stewardship model, using that stewardship model to develop, you know, a collaborative process so that staff and teams and managers own the data and own kind of the recommendations. So the whole idea behind it is that the CQI team, so Jamie, you know, Fred, actually they're the ones who do the majority of the program reports, they would kind of collect the data, they would present the data, and then the managers and the staff, they would, you know, look at it and make any recommendations. The idea is that we would do these program reports, you know, every 1 to 3 years, you know, our bigger programs, so like our child and family mental health, outpatient mental health program, we probably do that on a yearly basis because they have so many clients going through, and we want to make sure that we're staying on top of that. Whereas some of our smaller programs, like my program, the FASD coordination program, is probably done every, you know, 3 years because it's a much smaller program. So I'm going to go through that data lifecycle again and just kind of identify how we use that data lifecycle to develop these team reports. So the first kind of question that we had to figure out, like, are we collecting the correct and accurate data? And, you know, what we tried to do is cluster that data input. So, you know, based on those 7 different indicators, you know, what in our system are we able to pull to kind of cluster around, you know, is our services safe? Is it client-centered? Is it effective? And actually last year we went through all of the different programs and really tried to figure out, do we have data in our systems that is able to pull? One of the big things, aha moments for us, is that this time, or I guess in the summer of last year, we didn't have a client experience questionnaire. And a lot of the information that you see of these 6 key indicators is really focused on the client experience questionnaire. So we developed a new client experience questionnaire based on each of these indicators. So there's 2 to 3 questions on that questionnaire that is relevant to each of these. So that way we're bringing in the client perspective in the services that they're receiving. So this is an example of all of the kind of outcomes and the data that we use for our child and family mental health. So then what we also did is that we tried to develop, and I say the word try because it's actually quite challenging with so different many programs, but we tried to develop a template that we could use for each, you know, program and a specific protocol that's done. You know, what do we need for each of these reports? So the idea is that, you know, we have our key indicators, our CQI team. So Jamie kind of pulls that information. She and Fred kind of look at it. They present that to the manager, and they help translate what that information means. The manager looks at it and says, this is kind of weird. Can you look at this, or can you try and pair this with this? And then we adjust that. Now, I'm just going to say, and like I said, this is a process. Fred just did a report actually that we're about to present to the team that actually doesn't follow the template at all, because it didn't make sense, and we really need to adjust things. And that first step of that program, we didn't, or when I talk about the accurate data, we actually didn't do a good enough job of making sure that the data was accurate that was going in. So we had to really kind of adjust our template. So that's a learning for us that, you know, when we do this program evaluation again, we need to make sure that that accurate going in is data so that we can then move through that cycle. And we'll spend more time when we do that program evaluation focusing on the accuracy of that data the next time we do it. So then after we kind of are comfortable with the information, we're comfortable, like from a manager and CQI perspective, then we do a lot of the report that kind of talks about what this information means, and we try and translate that in a way that the staff are going to understand. And then we sit down with the staff, we book a number of hours to say, all right, let's go through this report. Let's really kind of identify what this means. And that's really the key. The staff identifies the meanings around why we're seeing this information. So then what happens, the team discusses it, and then they work together to collaboratively create those recommendations and the next steps moving forward. And then, you know, they value, because they participated in it, they value that data, they value that those recommendations, and then they go and they implement it. And we kind of continue with that cycle again and again and again. The other thing I'll just point out is that sometimes we may identify, ooh, the way that we're tracking this information isn't, you know, we need to adjust it. So that might be, you know, one of those recommendations that we change in how we track that information, which then takes us back to the, you know, the accurate and complete data. So a couple of reflections on the team service reports. The first is, and we thought that we would be able to, you know, bang these out really quickly. We don't. It takes us a very long time to do it, this process. One, to pull the information, and then to go back and forth with the managers, and then back and forth with the team. It takes an exceptional amount of time, and we actually weren't expecting it to take that long, but it does. So we're trying to work through that as well. The other thing is, and I'm sure with a lot of other people on this call, we have a lot of data and we have a lot of information. So it's really we're really trying to figure out what is the most important information to use in these team service reports. And the ironic thing is that, yes, we have a lot of data, and we are often missing a lot of data, right? So often that first report, you know, is a little bit fractured, if you will, because we still are going through that process. And, you know, that first step is so important for having that accurate information in the system. The other big thing is that we need to have a most responsible person that is able to lead those recommendations, that actually has a very strong skill set in change management. Change management is key, culture is key, and it kind of drives everything that we do. So being able to use some of those change management strategies to adjust that culture with those recommendations is absolutely huge. And like I said, these are all things that we are still struggling with and trying to work through and trying to kind of figure out how do we do better with these things. And that is it for CCTB's part in this presentation.
Thanks, everyone. So I'm next. My name is Marianne Roebuck, and I'm here to tell the story about the use of dashboards at CMHA Ottawa. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here and to speak with Jamie, Fred, Scott, and Lamia. We have such common threads going through our presentations, and I resonate so much with the disclaimers and reflections that Jamie, Fred, and Scott have been saying as well. And I hope that that comes across in what I'm sharing as well. A little bit, oh, sorry, I need to switch to my slide. There's a little bit of that delay that I think I'll catch up to as I begin. A little bit about CMHA Ottawa first, before I really get into our story about dashboards. We serve approximately 1,500 adults with serious mental illness each year who, when they enter our services, are homeless or vulnerably housed. We usually, a high proportion of our clients also have co-occurring substance use. Our core services are intensive case management and outreach services through the courts the homeless shelters, and also hospitals in Ottawa. We also provide housing services using a housing first approach and integrated nursing and concurrent disorder interventions. So within our team, like CCTB, we have a team that's focused on evaluation research, quality improvement, quality assurance, and data management. It's called the Decision Support and Accountability Team, and that's the place where some of this dashboard work was initiated, although it involved the whole organization as well. When we began this initiative, our purpose was to expand the organization's use of its data for decision support, ultimately leading to improved client care. So we were trying to shift the data culture and explore how we could build performance measurement into more of the culture of the organization as well. What I'll do in the presentation is I'll show you two dashboards and explain them, two types of dashboards that we provide, explain them, try to share a bit about our language and communications and messaging that's helped with the data culture in the organization, and then I'll share a bit about the process. So the first dashboard that I'm sharing is a frontline staff dashboard that's provided to our case managers and outreach workers every month. It's provided statically, and it gives a picture of the caseload for each frontline staff member. And this is how we phrase the purposes of the dashboard, which reflect how we speak to our staff about data as well. So what we're doing with the frontline staff dashboards is we're sharing information back to staff that they are collecting. So there's a transparency to it. We're supporting the provision of high quality client care. We're giving staff and supervisors a regular picture of their caseload, their demographics, contacts, and assessment results. And we're supporting supervision, providing information to inform decisions about caseloads, to validate the high quality work that a worker does, and to discuss caseload challenges. So this dashboard report is 3 pages long, and this is the first page. So picture a supervisor and one of the case managers or outreach workers in our organization opening this up in a supervision meeting and having a conversation about it. At the top of the dashboard, you see there's the size of the case manager's caseload for that month. We have 2 graphs that provide a picture of the contacts by client for that month, and then some demographics that correspond with the person's caseload. Some of the questions that a manager and case manager might discuss are, a manager might start by saying, what does this dashboard tell us about your caseload this month? What does it tell us about the needs on your caseload? So you continue to serve a high number of people with co-occurring substance use and serious mental illness. How is that going for you? Have you provided referrals to our CD programming? There's one person who isn't meeting you in person. Is that somebody that's titrating out of service or someone that's disengaged? You're working on engaging them into the program. Is some information missing? Can we update that can we update that as soon as possible? Does this provide an accurate reflection of your caseload for this month? So these are the kinds of conversations that managers have with their case managers and outreach workers when they bring up the dashboard. And then the second page is a summary of the assessments that have been completed to date for the year. And there were just the 4 common assessments that the case managers and outreach workers complete, and it's the most recent assessment that's been completed. So this was something we grappled with. Do we show assessment results over time, comparing baseline and current and so on? And we landed on this one through consultation, just providing the picture of where the most recent assessment. So again, the language in the conversation with the case manager and their manager is very similar. What does this dashboard tell you about your caseload right now? What stands out to you? Is this an accurate reflection of the needs of your clients right now? Has this led to certain referrals to our CD programming? how are these discussions around substance use support going? There's some people on your caseload who might have higher community functioning. Has this been a change over time? And are there conversations around completing the service and so on? Sorry that it's a bit blurry there. And then the final page of this, oh no, there's some sort of thing going on. Okay, so, oh, I'm not sure about the clarity of this, so apologies for that, it's a bit blurry. The final page is just a summary of our mandated Ontario community, our Ontario Common Assessment of Need, the OCAN, which we complete. It's again through consultations with staff. We've honed this down to support the needs of staff, so it includes the heartbeat that our case managers work through when completing the OCAN with their clients, and the table on the left flags if somebody's missing an OCAN and it's past the heartbeat date. So that's been a helpful tool for staff members. And then on the right, it's just a summary of the unmet needs on a person's caseload so that we can see if there are higher areas of unmet need, and the conversation with the manager is more around almost program development and program support to help to address those needs. So that's our monthly frontline staff dashboard. And then the second dashboard that I want to share is shares a different lens. It's more around social determinants of health and demographics in our provincial data set. So this is what we call our annual snapshot dashboard. It's a report that we really in the background develop just once a year, and then we have it and we're able to filter it based on ad hoc requests that come up regularly throughout the year. So it's saved us a little bit of time. It's helped us to have an annual examination of the needs of our clients and reflections on how we're staying on top of them. Whereas the previous dashboard I showed you was more about a supervision type dashboard. This one is more around program planning and communications. So this is provided to the entire agency, and then it's filtered upon request and provided statically as well. This is the kind of messaging, again, it's similar to the frontline staff dashboard. So we're sharing information back to the organization that they collect for transparency reasons, especially. We're supporting program planning. We want to be really good at communicating internally and externally to share who we serve as an organization and talk about who we serve as an organization internally. And we want to give staff a regular picture of their clients across the agency by team and by program. This is the very straightforward dashboard that we have. So it's just one page. It's just a summary of some of the demographic characteristics for a whole fiscal year. So in 2022 to 2023, we served 1,479 unique clients. And then these were the characteristics. And we can filter this dashboard in different ways. So these are some examples of ad hoc requests we've had where we filtered the data and then changed it a little bit to address the communications needs or the program planning needs. So this one is a filter by our subgroup of clients who've identified as being Indigenous. So what we've done is we've just filtered so that it shows a picture of our clients who are Indigenous. There were 173 in the fiscal year. This is 2020. And then as it filters, it just shows how this subgroup is unique within the organization. So we can see right away that our Indigenous clients, there's a higher percentage of clients in the younger age group in the organization. There are less clients who are housed in the organization in this subgroup. And then we have a higher percent of chronic medical conditions and a higher percent of needs around co-occurring substance use. So just at a glance, we're able to filter the demographics of this subgroup and help to have a conversation to communicate around the needs of this subgroup. We can also do things like create a little bit of a story around the subgroup in our organization, so we can compare to the organization of people who are Indigenous in Ottawa, people experiencing homelessness who are Indigenous in Ottawa. We can also look at our programs. So when we looked at our programs, we found that there was a low number of people who are Indigenous who are served in hospital outreach, which makes sense because often Indigenous people have more challenges accessing primary health care. So that's one example of how we filtered and used our annual snapshot data. Another example was a request to look specifically at our clients who had diagnoses of schizophrenia. So in the same way, we filtered the subgroup so that we were just looking at the primary diagnostic category of schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. And then we could see differences here or similarities when comparing with all of our client populations. So one thing that stood out at this time, which we changed and manipulated with this dashboard a bit, was that we found that people with a diagnosis of schizophrenia were staying in our services for longer. They were more, even when considering our outreach services, they were coming into our services and staying in programs for more than a year. There was a lower incidence of co-occurring substance use, a bit of a different change in the age groups. And so this leads to conversations around who these subgroups are and how we can better serve their needs. So those are the two dashboards that I wanted to share. And now I'll just share a little bit about the process with similar experiences to CCTV. So first of all, when we were especially starting this dashboard process, there was a process mapping exercise going on in the organization in 2021. And we heard messaging related to assessments and data that gave us a bit of a sense of readiness and where the organization was at in terms of its data culture. So there were roles, staff and peers were saying assessments could play a role in measuring client progress and care. They had ideas around using data to provide referrals. Peers said assessments were used sensitively in their provision of care. Peers wanted to be included actively in the process of increasing data use and assessment use, and staff navigated assessments while building client rapport. So there was this conversation around staff wanting to understand how to use assessments and data while maintaining their client rapport and trust. And then we were considering external contexts, especially the change or a shift to be more measurement-based and outcome focused and really digging into our data at the provincial level, especially with Ontario Health's lead. We wanted to stay on top of that move in the province as well. So this led to our focus on starting to talk to staff about data and data use and dashboards. So when we were developing the dashboards, this is our process that we went through. We looked at the data that was collected already in the organization. We reviewed documents, especially logic models that had been developed over the years in the agency to get a sense of common indicators and common ways that outputs and outcomes were measured in the organization. We used an approach called data parties, which I'll speak to in the next slide. We developed prototypes, so many different versions of dashboards, and we consulted across the organization and had conversations about the prototypes. And then when we launched the dashboards again, the process continued iteratively and continues iteratively to this day with ongoing feedback and evaluation. So I'll speak a little bit about our consultation approach. So we borrowed the concept of data parties and data walks, a collaborative data analysis approach where different charts from a study are put up in a room and people who have different parts to play in a study, different experiences, different stances, walk around the room and interpret the data and talk about what they see in the data. So when we were consulting on the dashboard prototypes, we just asked simple questions which reflect some of the language I shared when I was talking about the dashboards and giving examples as well. So we just say, what does this dashboard tell you? What stands out to you? How might you use this dashboard in your everyday work? If you were to receive a similar dashboard to help you do your work, what would you want on your dashboard? And what do you feel is missing? So these were our simple questions in the consultations. And with that information, we continued to develop different iterations until we landed on what I shared today. And we continue on as well. I just wanted to say, especially based on what Lamia shared and Jamie and Scott and Fred, behind the dashboards, we have our performance measurement framework. So we have more of our conversations around indicators and key performance indicators and targets, and we try to build those into the dashboards. And it was an interesting process where we were using the dashboards and prototypes, and the dashboards informed then our performance measurement framework. So it felt a bit backwards, but it's this cycle and ongoing process, I think, that feeds into itself. We compared we analyzed our experience implementing the dashboards based on an implementation science framework, Dan Schroeder's consolidated framework for implementation research. And through this examination, we identified key facilitators to implementing the dashboards, which I hope will help with different experiences in local contexts as well. So like CCTB, it's taken a lot of time, and it still takes a lot of time, and where we want to go is different from where we are. So these are some of the things that we've found has been helpful. And it's in the language of the CFIR as well. So we found that throughout this initiative, we've had to definitely prioritize flexibility. And we've really relied on this idea that the dashboards were prototypes and could be trialed and adapted continuously. We also felt it was very important that we convince the organization and the staff that implementing the dashboards was better than continuing in the status quo. So it's this relative advantage and showing the need for an innovation or sharing in a discussion where the need for the innovation is really evident. And then the dashboards needed to be seen as compatible with the organization. They had to fit the values of staff, and they also had to fit into the workflow of the users. So this is one of the key lessons and always considered when we were implementing the dashboards. We also had to make space and time for reflection, evaluation, and feedback, which felt cumbersome at times because it would slow down the process, but very necessary for implementation. And then we relied on implementation leaders. So the opinion leaders, so people in the organization who really served as peers and help to influence how others are thinking in the organization, champions of the innovation itself, so those data nerds in the organization. The formal leadership needed to really support the dashboards, and then we relied on external change agents, so university partners, other organizations doing something similar, E-QIP, the CMHA Ontario, and everybody kind of being in line or doing similar things and drawing on each other for examples and ideas and problem solving. So from there, I just have some really high level recommendations. Again, the caveat is that it's taken time, and there's the hard work that's, I hope, is reflected in this too, the challenges along the way. But the idea of using a quality improvement approach to start small, to see what our first, what we can do, thinking of the dashboards as individual projects and monitoring the change, that's been important. Understanding that the broader work, that there is an organizational cultural shift to prioritize data quality, so that helps to put things in perspective. There's this need for committing time and resources, the high need for collaboration and ongoing input from staff to make sure that we're focused on utility. And then the importance of training for use at all levels. So walking alongside staff and walking through even those scripts or the ways that we talk about dashboards and changing them as we hear different ideas coming up. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, Marianne, Jamie, Fred, and Scott as well. I'm going to hand it back over to Lamia to round out the conversation. I do see that there is a question in the chat. And so perhaps after Lamia has rounded out the discussion, we'll start answering questions that folks have.
Thanks, Laura. And thanks, Jamie, Scott, Fred, and Marianne for this huge information about data and dashboards. And I can see that all what you spoke about fit into the theory. So all of us agree that the ultimate goal of the collecting the data is to provide basis of action. So as Scott mentioned, we realize that we have a lot of data, and we also are missing a lot of data. So identifying the data that is needed for whatever we are measuring is very important. Also, choosing a set of smarter indicators, and we can see how Fred, Scott, Jamie, and Marianne as well, they choose clusters of indicators and they aligned it with the strategic objectives. Scott and Fred and the team spoke how they aligned it with the 6 quality dimensions, efficiency, effectiveness, timely, and so on. This is really very, very important. Also, Marianne talked about how they align the dashboards and the data they collect with what the staff is needing, what the leadership is needing to monitor, what it means to them, what is in it for me. So collecting relevant data and monitoring relevant indicators is really crucial. Also setting the benchmarks and targets for those indicators. I can see that Scott was talking about the 80% and was pretty ambitious, and they needed to change it. And until now, they can figure out how it can be set. I appreciate this acknowledgement, and all of us should do that like this, because this is the smarter way of thinking, you know, evaluating and adjusting. Also, I like what Marianne mentioned about the data walk and how they engage the staff, how they listen to them, and how they communicate, you know, with them about data and what is meaningful for them and how can they interpret this. I hear to the team talking about the data quality and how it is important. And maybe the question Jacqueline asked can fit here. Should we collect it from the reports? Should we collect it from, you know, the source? Again, it's if the reports are accurate, why not? If the source is accurate, why not? I personally prefer the source because you can control it much better. You know, when the data is handled many times down the road, it might lose some of its integrity. So always dealing with the source is in my opinion, is more like mistake proven, will be mistake proven, but I will let my colleagues speak to this as well. Effective communication, this is really great. And I see that Fred and the team and Marianne are talking all the time about how they communicate the data to the staff, frontline staff, manager, leadership, and the level of communication is different, and the way of communication will be different in building the dashboards. Also getting the input from the staff on what makes sense to them or what they want to see on the dashboard or what elements that we might be missing. This is very important. So effective communication, listening to and communicating to is very important. Engagement is very important, something to consider while dealing with data. And again, it's a continuous improvement process, and we heard about this. So the team is talking about we are continuously improving. We implemented the performance measure, the performance management model, and it wasn't a success. And we moved to the lean, and the lean culture and the lean principle was a success. And I can see this why, because Lean actually is focusing on improving the flow in the process and improving and focusing also on the voice of the customer, what they need. So I can see why Lean principle is a success in here. And And also targeting, thinking about how to think about our targets. 80% might not be realistic. How can we put this in action? Again, it's a process that will pursue perfection, but we need to acknowledge that it will not be perfect, but we always pursue perfection. Data literacy advancement here, I've seen all the team members talking about the data culture, enhancing the data literacy within the organization, how important to listen to the staff and their needs, and how important to foster this culture and empower the different staff at the organization at all levels to contribute meaningfully, listen to them, and communicate with them frequently, efficiently, and effectively. So thank you all for this very informative presentation, and acknowledging that it is not an easy process. It's a continuous improvement process. Thank you.
Thank you, Lamia. I couldn't have done it any better. So thank you for rounding that conversation out. And now is the time for us to hold some space for questions from the participants. And as we engage in that conversation and discussion, I will be launching a poll that we are hoping to get some feedback from participants around the experience today. We do curate these sessions based off of that response. So please let us know your thoughts, and we'll keep the poll open while we do the Q&A. And so I'm just going to take us back to the question that Jacqueline posed in the chat, which was how do agencies pull their data, and are you pulling from reports or the back end? So I'm wondering if either the folks at CMHA Ottawa, Marianne, or Children's Centre have some thoughts about that.
Sure, I can start. So this is a good question. It comes up a lot. So we use, to be specific, we use CRMS as our EHR software. And when we were looking into how best to start to explore dashboards, the way that we've done it is we use our Excel reports that we pull from CRMS, and then those that we use the Excel tables to then feed into our Power BI dashboards. We certainly in the future want to get to a place where we can pull directly from the back end, but we found that we just wanted to start with what we had, and that's how we develop our dashboards right now.
That's great. Thank you, Marianne. Scott?
I can jump in here. Similarly, we use our client management software to pull our reports. So all the information is entered into EMHware, and then we pull reports from EMHware, and we use Tableau. So when we export it to an Excel file, we put those Excel files into Tableau to create our dashboards.
And just so you know, for those who use EMHware, it was a very steep learning curve to understand what does each report truly pulled, and we did a lot of detective work to try and figure that out, and to make sure that it's pulling what we thought it was pulling, and that the information that's going in is able to be pulled from those specific reports.
That's great. Thank you. I hope that has answered your questions. Yes, Natalie is just saying in the chat that the EMHware and pulling reports is not user-friendly.
Yeah, we've been able to pull, like what we've done and when we talked about it takes 3 hours for Jamie to put those together to develop those dashboards. Really what it is, it's pulling and merging all the different reports and kind of cleaning some of that data so that we can use it in Tableau. I'll say that the canned ministry report that I think some of you may have has taken us a very long time to figure out exactly the parameters around that. So there are some unuser-friendly pieces around pulling reports from EMHware for sure.
That's great. Thank you, Scott. I see there's a couple of questions in the chat. One's from Kate and one's from Natalie. I'll start with Kate's question. Kate says she really liked the model presented by the first speaker, so Lamia. but I missed the example of how the first presenter applied the body temperature example into the KPI level of the model.
Okay, I can speak to this because the body temperature example is something when I say my body temperature is 37 degrees without providing any context to this, what this information will tell you. If you don't know the context, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't provide any piece of information. But when I add the reference range to it, what is normal and what is abnormal, it will give you a bit of indication here. So it indicates whether I'm healthy or I'm not. So for example, if I say the wait time is 30 days for a certain service, okay, for brief services, the wait time is 30 days. Without knowing what makes sense for this, or what is expected, or what is the benchmark, 30 days, is it long? Is it short? Is it, what is it? What is the interpretation? What it indicates? It indicates that I'm timely, I'm efficient or not. Without adding a context to it, I can provide any sort of information. But when I say the wait time is 30 days and the benchmark in the sector is 20 days, for example, that means I am exceeding the benchmarks and I'm not as efficient as expected, or I'm not as timely as expected, and I need to take an action here. So the piece of information that with a context will provide a base for action here. Am I clear on this, or?
I thought that was a great reiteration of what you mentioned before. We have 1 minute left before we close out the Q&A. We have one question left. And there's also a message or a question that was just sent to me. So I have 2 questions and I don't have time for both. So perhaps what I can do is I could see if I can get the answers from the presenters and send them out. But the question in the Q&A that came in is, what are your recommendations for leaders and management to support and implement a data-driven culture where employees are communicating increased burnout in the MH&A sector and feel that having to meet certain benchmarks will increase their stress levels? So we'll have one person from the speakers who feels like super inspired to answer that. We have time for one response.
The key is change management. And we can speak in details to this.
Yes, and I'm wondering if this is something that we think about in terms of, putting together a webinar that might help with the change, because I heard that mentioned as well in Fred's presentation.
Whoever presented that is something that we struggle with on a daily basis, and it's something that we continues to work through, and it's very relevant right now in our current workforce, and we don't have a clear answer for it.
Yes, thank you, Scott. We're taking note here at E-QIP in terms of what potentially we could do for the sector. So I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to advance the slides to, and I've got a few little buttons here because I was managing the Q&A and launching the poll at the same time. So just advancing the slides. I just wanted to make sure before folks hopped off that they know that we have our next data literacy webinar around collecting and using data to drive equity plans. And so stay tuned for more details around speaker. You can see the objectives that are written there. Also, just our ideas online. If you're looking for some foundational QI learning, this is a free training that's tailored to the sector. It is also free, and you get a certificate of completion at the end. So check that out. We also have our governance and leadership training for providers, and the information is on the slide, and you can click the links to learn more. And we also have our community of practice. Again, you can, these slides will be sent out after, and you can take a peek. Consultations are also available. And without holding folks too much longer, thank you so much to our presenters, to our attendees, and to those who helped facilitate this discussion today. Huge thank you to all of you for coming out today. We hope that you left here with something that will help you unlock the power of data in your work.